Hello and welcome back to the game room. You know what I love? Video games. You know what I love talking about? Games. And it seems like a lot of people these days who cover games seem to hate them. Or at least the people who play them. Well, that's not me. And that's not the 3,621 of you beautiful people checking out this video here today. We've made a new milestone, 3,600 and counting. We have about 2 months left in 2024. Can we get to 4,000 subscribers? Maybe. I don't know. Who cares? I'm so thrilled. This has been such an incredible year. And with Halloween coming up on Thursday, I love the Halloween season, but I will admit, especially having a 2-year-old, it's hard for me to really get in the zone. It's not like a few years ago where I could just have really super scary movies playing. With my job now, I work early in the morning, can't stay up late and watch these scary movies I want to. But I wanted to touch base on some scary Halloween themed games, or just scary games in general, on the 360 for today's video. Now, we are going to be talking about some dirt commons here, but we also are going to be talking about some really cool gets. So if that sounds interesting to you, let's check it out. There's a lot of games out there, some of which you've never even heard of. That's where I come in. My name's Luke. I've been playing games since the age of 2, and I have no life.
This is my game room.
Alright, so the first one we're going to talk about is another game that really skyrocketed during the FOMO and has kind of come down to earth, though it is still floating around a $50 game, and that is the much more respected on the 360 version of Silent Hill Downpour. So there's 2 Silent Hills on the 360, like original games. There's this one, and then there's Homecoming. Homecoming, by all accounts, is not really a good game, and I can confirm that when I played it, I did not really enjoy it. Downpour gets a lot more praise, though when it came out, I think this game it wasn't all that great anyways. Just popping it and playing it for a little bit, it's a little confusing, as well as it really gives off an Alan Wake vibe. And as someone who just finally played and beat the first Silent Hill last year, I can see where that level of tension, that level of mystery does seem to be missing from this game. In this game, you start off, you're in prison. They kind of hint at why you're in prison with the death of a certain individual. And then you are with the guards. They put you in a room where you're taking out some other guy who's like this big chubby dude. And then you get transferred to a max security prison that's driving through Silent Hill. And then that's where the familiar level of the land comes. The bus is about to crash. It goes crazy. You get out. Somehow your cuffs are off. And now you're in Silent Hill. Which also, is that how Silent Hill works? If you're just driving on the road past where this town is, things just go nuts? Like, how is this not something that pops up more and more if it's just driving through this little town? Especially if it's a prisoner transport. You'd think they would have sent prisoners from a medium security prison to a max security prison in the past, but I digress. It's interesting. It seems like this game is going to give you some choices. Now, early on, the first choice you're given is that the female officer that is transferring you to the max security prison, she finds you after the bus crashes, and then you have the chance to help her or not help her. And I just, usually 9 times out of 10, if this was a playthrough I was going to do, I would have helped her. But because I wasn't anticipating beating the game right there, I'm like, no way, you're just going to arrest me. So I didn't help her, and I'm not sure how permanent this choice was. But if I just straight up let her die right there, then whoa. Okay, that's some pretty cool choice they have in it, which also it leads me to think that she's not all that important to the story. It very much is evocative of Silent Hill 1 as far as that mystery, but there's just nothing that can really play on that same level of tension of being in that town that's covered in fog, with finding the radio that makes that little bit of sound. It's kind of the thing of your imagination is 100 million times more scary than what you can see on screen, and it just didn't seem all that terrifying It was uneasy. I got to the point in the game where you go through the first terror place. So in Silent Hill, you'll have this trip of reality where you're in the regular world and then you're in this big machinery, almost like the bowels of hell type thing with metal grates and just very metallic, almost like Freddy Krueger's boiler room type scenery. And so I got through that setting, and it messes with your mind. It reminds me, like, I never played PT, the Silent Hills trailer, where you're walking through the hallway that's endless, but you kind of have a thing where you're going up a staircase that's endless, you're forced to go backwards. There's also this weird disembodied smoke creature or electronic creature that's chasing you down, and it slows you down, but doesn't quite kill you, and it's unnerving. It's definitely, as someone who, I am a self-professed wimp when it comes to these horror games, I definitely had no interest continuing playing it. But comparing it to the way that Silent Hill made me feel, it wasn't as visceral. Like and also with Silent Hill, I enjoyed it more because that mystery of the unknown was so much more palpable that it allowed you to have that false sense of security enough to still play. Whereas this one, I just felt not safe at all, but also not as invested. I don't know. I also wasn't enjoying as much. It really felt like Konami's attempt to try and beat Alan Wake, and I can see why both of this one and the other one, weren't as popular. Though this one is far better than the other one as far as setting the tone, and I do enjoy the rain theme, hence Downpour. I'm sure the rain has something to do with it. But yeah, a good one, definitely one that's going to keep going up if any of the other Silent Hills have proved anything. And I know the Silent Hill 2 remake came out, which it sounds like some people in my comments even said was phenomenal, which I'm so happy for. I have yet to play Silent Hill 2, and if you guys have played both, I do have the PS2 version. I picked it up last year, and I have been planning on playing it. I probably was going to play it this year even, but before all this 360 lunacy happened. So would you recommend playing that one and then going to the one for the modern audience, or is the remake so good I should just start there? Let me know. All right. And then another one that I have touched base on before, but I didn't actually play it. Now, I've beaten the first game in the series, but I haven't played the ones on the Genesis, and I didn't play the 360 one. And so this was one of the ones I really wanted to check out for Halloween, and that is Splatterhouse. Now, when I put this game in to play it, my wife just happened to come into the room, and there's this funny thing where every time she sees me playing video games, it always just happens to be the most grotesque, the most disturbing, the most vile imagery you can ever imagine. So at the beginning of this game, you see the main character, Rick, I think it's Rick, or Ricky, puts the mask on, and then he turns into this big hulking monster with blood everywhere, and she just walks in right at this moment. Bear in mind, this is a musical theater loving Disney fan. You know, she's a good sport with this stuff, but it is not her jam. And she just looks in there, and I can see in her eyes the like, why have I done this to myself? Why am I with this disgusting person? But yeah, that's how Splatterhouse starts. But it is a fun game. It takes place in a mansion that does seem to have warping walls. It isn't completely there. And it does evoke a little of that Bloodborne risk-reward where you'll get attacked, but as you're attacking other enemies, you fill a blood meter. And then in order to heal yourself, you can unleash the blood meter and then suck up the blood from the other enemies in the room, and that restores your health. So there's a constant back and forth with taking damage, getting health back, taking damage, getting health back. So it's not a game where you're not expected to get hit. You're going to get hit a lot. And it's very violent. It's very over the top. They do a great job of doing what I complain about a lot, where games will give you a taste of what it is to be the max power and then downgrade you. At least in this game, they do it believably. So once you put the mask on, you gotta get the full suite of powers. You're going around destroying all these enemies. But then the mask is like, oh wow, you can't handle this level of power yet. Let me tone it down. So it makes sense. It's a nice way of giving you a taste of how powerful you will be so that you know what to look forward to. But also, story-wise, explaining why we did that, other than a non-linear storytelling, which was so popular in the 2010s and late 2000s. But yeah, other than that, it's a pretty mindless beat 'em up type hack and slash or sort of that kind of feel. But because of that risk reward of having to constantly monitor your health, it is not as mindless as I expected it to be. And there's a lot of different difficulty levels. I think I was just playing it on normal, and I still found it a decent enough challenge. It really is faithfully recreating the feel of the original, in my opinion, just with sort of the way you traverse the mansion, even going through holes, going into different crevices of the levels, the enemies themselves. Like, this is nice. This is back. It's funny to think that when people would remake things or reboot things, they would actually try to evoke the original and respect the original, because that just does not seem to be the case anymore. 9 times out of 10, if you see something getting remade or rebooted, the creative team behind it is going to champion the fact that they don't even know the source material. Like, it's kind of nuts. So this game does a great job of evoking that Splatterhouse feel, as well as if you beat the game, you get access to the original 3 games, the TurboGrafx game, and then the 2 Genesis games. So this is a phenomenal package, and I don't know about you guys, but I really regret not picking this one up even earlier. So this was one of the first pickups I got back in March, and I picked up a copy that didn't even have a damn manual. So I just have it with the case and the game, but I cannot tell you how many times I debated getting this when it was like $15, $20. My buddy Wes covered this game, I want to say circa 2017, 2018, and he said how much fun it was, and I still didn't pick it up, because I still remember when it came out, and it really got bad reviews. And I am kicking myself, because yes, it is grotesque, it is very inappropriate and stuff, but it's still fun, and it's nice, and it's a cool reimagining of an old 16 8-bit game that does it justice, and I really liked it. This was a very, very good game, and I'm glad I went back and gave it a second shot. Gave it a shot, because, you know, the way I had imagined it was playing was very colored by what I've heard about it. And yeah, it is repetitive. I can say it is repetitive, but because you're having to balance that risk reward of getting hit, I think there's a lot of nuance to it that'll keep you coming for more. And there's the funniness of ripping limbs off, beating them with it. When you hit them with the bat, they get splattered on the wall, just like what would happen in the original game. So if you've played the original game, playing the new one really is a treat. And if you haven't played the original game, it's still very, very fun. All right. Now, here's a gimme. I've talked about the sequel on the very first video I did on the 360. And just to talk about it here, because this really is, I mean, you can't think of a more appropriate Halloween-themed game than the original Left 4 Dead. Now, in my opinion, I like Left 4 Dead 2 more, but I will admit there is a subset of people out there, my older brother included, who prefer the original. I like the melee combat weapons. I like the addition of the jockey, the charger, and the spitter. But there is a certain level of purity to the original game. I believe the pistols are a heck of a lot more damage in dealing. The campaign itself, the feel of itself, it is still very serviceable and enjoyable. Though the second game has the entire campaign of the first game as DLC. So it was always hard for me to justify ever going back to it, but it is slightly different, and it is still worth having. And one of those things that was one of the games where it really, not a good thing, it made it clear that they were no longer doing native 4-player multiplayer. I remember there was a night specifically at my buddy David's where we rented this game, or we had a friend, you had a group of friends, there was someone who had this game, and we were like, bring that thing over, because it was kind of it's funny, when Left 4 Dead came out, it didn't get great reviews. And it was hard to explain the concept. There weren't many games out there where it was really just a 4-player co-op game going through various campaigns as a group, and then having it get harder and harder, and then the filmmaker thing where it could have different waves of enemies come in, and then the different variants of it in a lot of ways was unusual. Because we were also invested in our 4-player Halos and 4-player, Call of Duty stuff of that nature. Even though you couldn't do online Call of Duty, you could still do local deathmatch with 4 players, which I did. I don't know if you guys did. We did a lot of that too. So with Left 4 Dead, we thought we could at least do 4-player local co-op, and you can't. The most you can do is 2-player. Like if I recall, yeah, you can only do 2-player with that. So, and then there was a versus mode. Maybe the versus mode allowed you to do more than 2 players there. But that was always the issue, is that you could only do 2-player for the actual campaign mode. So, and this became an issue later in life when I wanted to play Left 4 Dead 2 with my older brother and my little brother. So we would always need 2 Xboxes to do this. But a phenomenal game, still one. You know, it's funny, the Left 4 Dead games have gotten more expensive, and I know people will say you can play it on the PC, and it's probably infinitely better, because you have mods, and you can have extra levels, and all that, but man, when I think back to the Xbox 360 era, other than Guitar Hero, I can't think of much more time spent playing something that was, you know, unique to the system, a new experience than Left 4 Dead. And unfortunately, they've never really been able to recapture it. Left 4 Dead 3 is probably going to come out when the cows come home. And Back 4 Blood, I have not played it, but man, they did get skewered by reviews. So that's one of those things where maybe those are wrong too. You know, like I said, the first Left 4 Dead, I don't remember getting great reviews. Anyways, moving on from that. So this was a game that I self-admittedly had zero interest in because I knew I could not handle it. And over the years, this game came out in 2014, so for the last decade, I have seen it crop up time and time again. I've almost purchased it several times, and I just haven't. And it really is more of a release that came out on the PS4, Xbox One generation, but there were a lot of these tail-end games that got released on the 360 that would have trouble running on the 360 or needed to be installed partially on the drive in order to run. And one of those games was this one, which was Alien Isolation. Now, this is the Nostromo edition, though I think that just meant it came with a DLC code. And I think there's other things, like this is a 20th Century Fox. Like, there's a bunch of different variances with this. To be, in all honesty, I should just buy the re-release of it on the Switch or modern consoles so I can have all the DLC, because there's a heck of a lot of DLC. But this game is such an incredible continuation of the Alien franchise that for some reason no other movie post-Aliens has been able to accomplish. It's kind of crazy. I have not seen the new Alien Romulus movie, but I have seen every other Alien movie, which I'm not even a self-professed Alien fan. I think I mentioned this when I talked about Alien Colonial Marines. I like Alien, I like Aliens, and I've seen all the other ones, but this was the one that I've heard from fans of the Aliens franchise. This is the game, because it takes place in universe. You're playing as Ellen Ripley's daughter, but it really kind of set the gold standard for a stalker game where you are underpowered, you can't possibly fight, and you're just trying to survive these enemies that can just rip you apart if they find you. And what's also very fascinating about it is the attention to detail, because you really feel in that opening sequence like you're in a Nostromo-like vehicle. It looks just like the scenery from the movies. They have the same type of computers. It's that same 1970s futuristic view, but it's really not futuristic to 2024. Like, they're using green screen DOS box looking computers, but they have spaceships and they're doing all this other crazy stuff. And to be honest with you, it's also kind of a puzzle game. So while you're not being stalked by the creature, you're having to figure out how to navigate, because at the beginning of the game, you're going to this big station, the station where people lived, and it went dark, as always seems to happen. And so you're investigating it, something goes wrong with you and your crew, and then you get over to the thing by yourself, and then you're having to figure out what the heck's going on. And there's just this overwhelming sense of dread that, for someone like me, I cannot handle that. I didn't even get to the section of the game where you actually see the alien because, I didn't have that much time, but also I already got it. Like, I got to the point where I could finally start hiding in lockers, and as soon as I saw that, I'm like, nope, they're coming soon. I understand, this game is freaking great. I don't need to pee my pants here right now. But yeah, really, really solid game. I can understand why so many people say and believe such high things about it. It really is the best thing that the Alien franchise has done. And I haven't even beaten it. I haven't even gotten to the damn Alien. But it is so, smartly crafted. It is so atmospheric. It really does feel like you're in that original Alien movie. Like, it brings the terror of the original Alien. You're not a space marine. You are just a scientist on a ship trying to survive. And man, is it cool. And it is definitely something I'm gonna give some more gameplay to, and maybe we'll get Jen in on that one too. I'm sure she actually, that was the other part. She came in right as I was playing it. Once again, like I say, she always comes at the worst possible times. So she comes in, I'm just walking through a regular hallway, nothing crazy. And she's like, "Oh yeah, let's go get some popcorn, maybe watch a movie." And right as this happens, a human runs across the screen. There's a sound effect, and she just looks at me like, like, nope. Nope. I'm not looking at that screen. Nope, I'm gonna have nightmares. So yeah, that was pretty funny. But yeah. Alright, so that's another one. Okay, so let's get to a series now that everyone knows, and I'm gonna talk about it, and that is the Dead Space series. So my familiarity with the Dead Space series started way back when it originally came out. I saw my friends playing it on the PS3 of all things, and I didn't have much jealousy when it came to that generation because I was playing World of Warcraft, but seeing them play Dead Space and seeing how cool it looked, how atmospheric, how really just unusual it felt like, because it had that behind the shoulder Resident Evil 4 combat, but it didn't seem like you were some overwhelming force, and then you were finding these really unique weapons, and the enemies you had to take out in unusual ways, and it just seemed like an evolution of that kind of Resident Evil terror in space, and I was hooked on it, but I didn't have a system. Well, when I finally got an Xbox 360, I bought Dead Space. And I didn't even realize at the time that I bought the Platinum Hits collection. That's how out of the loop I was. On the 360, I just was like, I gotta buy Dead Space. And so I went to play it, and I got the bejesus scared out of me that I put it down. And I know my little brother at the time was with me. This had to be like 2009. And I'm like, nope, not playing it. And I didn't go back to it for maybe a year. Maybe like a year and a half until I played through it and I beat it. It was so ingrained on how terrifying that opening is, just alone, that when I was doing Noob Gamer with Jen, I had her play it, and man, that was, once again, that was fun. That was a lot of fun. She got the bejesus scared out of her, too. But outside of that, it really is such a fun game. It is perfectly paced. I have the remake for the PS5. I have not yet played it because it was why I was like, why are you remaking the game? This game came out so soon ago. Other than graphics, how can you improve on it? Because I enjoyed it that much. The sound design is incredible. Getting the logs, even though I don't love it when you can't pause to look at your inventory in games, you never felt safe. It's so good. It's so good. It really captured, once again, that Alien feel, because this was before Alien Isolation by about 6 years. And it really did make you feel like you were trapped in space with these crazy aliens. And then the revolutionariness of cutting the limbs off the aliens, being able to take and move objects with stasis, just very cool. Even the zero gravity stuff, I know people complained about. I didn't really find all that problem. I think they fixed that. Well, that's one of the things they fixed in the remake. So after Dead Space 1, I was fully on board and could not wait for Dead Space 2. Now, Dead Space 2 introduced some cool frenetic combat. It allows you to spear enemies with their own spikes, which is cool. It has a much bigger scope story. It really brings more of the marker in place. You get a lot more, like the first Dead Space, you're not sure if Isaac is going crazy or not. He doesn't even talk. I believe he does talk in the second one, but it is the clear aliens comparison, because Dead Space 2 is not nearly the fright fest that the original Dead Space was, because you feel like such a badass. You've survived the first game and you already know what you're doing. It's much more fast paced. Now there's some real grotesque things that happen in this game, especially like the baby bombs that come up and things like that, which when I played it in my early 20s really didn't register as much as it registers now just thinking about it. But a wonderful game. kind of a weird ending, how it plays out. It does have an unkillable stalker enemy towards the end of it, which I just do not like. I don't like, which is part of the reason why I didn't pick up Alien Isolation back in the days. I'm not a big fan of that in a game where you are a badass, but maybe that's why I was willing to give it a shot, because that whole stalker element is a gameplay style now. But Dead Space 2 is a very good sequel. When I was doing the QA testing for Microsoft back around 2010, I was hoping that I would get called in to do the QA testing for Dead Space 2. Instead, I got called in for Alice Madness Returns, Shadows of the Damned, and Syndicate. But I was always hoping, because I wanted to check out Dead Space 2. But really, really fun game. And then, unfortunately, not all good things last, and we did get Dead Space 3, which takes place on an ice planet. It introduces co-op. I think I'm of the belief that if I had played this game as a co-op game, which it's not even local co-op, it's online co-op, but I firmly believe that this is probably a phenomenal co-op experience. However, most people did not experience it as a co-op game, seeing as how Dead Space really carries more of a single-player vibe. So I'm still withholding ultimate judgment until I tried it that way. And also with another caveat of being, I think now that we are, almost 10 years removed when this game came out, I think it may have aged better than we're aware of, especially given the kind of quality of AAA games we're given now. Maybe Dead Space 3 isn't as bad as we remember. It almost just felt like they were really trying to evoke The Thing with this game, and they weren't quite sure where to go. You know, they retconned some things from the second game. You know, you have to have that fake out ending, but then it doesn't really get addressed, and then some people die, people don't die. I don't know. It just, you could tell that honestly, you could tell that it was fraying at the edges in Dead Space 2, because they did drastically go so far away from this being a simple engineer fighting for his life to now being an action hero. And then in Dead Space 3, it kind of just culminates in the fact that you're relying on this other character, and then the crafting system, like everything around this time started getting a crafting system, which I could not stand. So that was part of it too. Once again, sometimes if you want to play the game your way, I don't want to play the game my way. I want to play the game the way the designer intended. That way I make sure I'm getting the most enjoyment out of it, because that's what their job is, not my job. Because you know what? I'll probably find some mid-max way that's not fun at all, but it's very effective, and then that will color my experience on how it plays. But there's the Dead Space trilogy. We have not had another game in that other than the remake, and Visceral Games, unfortunately, is another sacrificial lamb to the cult of Electronic Arts. But there you go. Those are the three of them. Definitely, if you're going to rank them, Dead Space 1 high above. Dead Space 2 is still a really good game. And then Dead Space 3, it was okay. But it kind of had it had the Resident Evil fall off, for sure. But at least it was worth still beating. Like, I never once thought I wasn't going to beat the game. In fact, I beat Dead Space 3. Thought it was a decent enough game. And then a lot of people just hated it. Alright, now last few we have here. So this is a funny one. I actually picked this game up on the PS4 and played it because it was made by the guy who did Resident Evil. I was not crazy about it, but then my little brother wanted it when he got an Xbox One, so I bought him a copy for the Xbox One on Amazon, and the seller sent me an Xbox 360 version. So I had to complain. He sent me the right ones that I could keep the game, and that is The Evil Within on the 360. Yet another game I was not aware of came out on the 360. Now, this is another game where you start off, you're in this meat locker type thing, you're hanging up, and it's just very grotesque, and I just could not get into it. I do not like it when you have a stalker killer chasing after you and you can't escape, and man, you get some grotesque kills, and there's another mind melding, like what's going on? As well as I'm noticing a lot of these games now, with not necessarily this one, where you'll go downhill and then you're having to slide left and right. Like, that happens a lot. I know I was impressed the first few times, like, wow, this game does it. Well, this game does it. Like, Tomb Raider did it. I think Silent Hill did it. I know it's happened in Uncharted games. And I think it may have happened in this. I can't remember. But, solid enough. Plays on the 360. It's another one of those games where it's starting to wear, like you're starting to see the 360 show its age once we get to these later or mid 2010 game releases. But still a solid experience, and like, God, the enemies that are invisible used to drive me the most nuts. As well as I believe that when you would take an enemy down, you had to light them on fire. And there was just too much overall dread. I can handle a level of dread. Let me be able to eliminate the threat. As long as the threat can be dealt with and put out, I'm okay. It's these games where you never completely can eliminate the threat. Those are the ones I just can't handle. And I don't know if the game comes with a slipcover on 360, because this is my PS4 version. It came with a slipcover. And one of the cool things that I just discovered for this video is it has a reversible cover. So if you want, you can get a reversible cover for it instead of the regular one. And the PS4 version is like that too. And yes, I don't have a manual, because once again, this was not a copy I had intended on buying for myself back in the day. It just kind of ended up in the collection, and I'm glad to have it now. Alright, last two games here. So we're going to be talking about a series that I remember this was a free games with gold, and it kind of came out of nowhere. It was another early 2010s release, kind of like I said, zombie games were everywhere, and this game was Dead Island. And this is the special edition. I think that just means it came with some extra DLC codes. There's really not factually anything that much different than the regular Dead Island, and the manual that comes with it is just the regular Dead Island manual. But just something to be aware of if you see this. No reason to really pay extra for the special edition, other than if you like this cool red cover. And as far as games go, it is a game where it expects you to be playing online. Now, you may initially think, oh, it's an online-only game. Not the case. You can switch it to single-player mode, and it allows you to go in there. You can select one of 4 players. They each have their own starting health stats. And then you drop into the island, and you slowly... You know, it's kind of the standard fare where it's like, okay, you get quests, and then you go off. It reminds me a lot of Dead Rising, which was another game I was going to talk about for this. But I just, I had enough games. But it does feel like that, where you have a home base of operations, you go out, you're doing tasks, you come back. There is not really a sense of dread in it. There is not a dangerousness to it. The different parts of the island have their own levels, and you just go in and you have a stamina system where you can hit them with different weapons. You get experience for killing them. You pick up money off them. You pick up reagents off them. Why on earth, in a world that's been overrun by zombies, would someone be willing to give you a badass machete for a bunch of money that means nothing? I don't know, but hey, that's just how it works. As well as the weapons do break, though I don't remember that, but that is something that happens, which is funny, as many people bitched and moaned about that in Zelda. You never hear anyone talking about it in any other game where that happens, which is a lot. But hey, anyways, I digress. But I had fun with it. I honestly had a lot of fun with it. This was a game I remembered playing back circa when it was with Games with Gold. It was one of those games I did play, and I enjoyed it for a time, but I got over it. Because I'm not into these always multiplayer, always online type games. I was very happy to find out you didn't have to do that, and I was enjoying going through and getting the weapons. And I don't think you can build such crazy weapons like you can in Dead Rising, but maybe you can. Maybe that is what this one's known for. And I know that it was forever. People wanted a sequel to come out, and it just didn't until maybe, last year. But there was a sequel that was made that I thought was DLC or standalone DLC, and it is not. And that game is Dead Island Riptide. Now, this is a special edition of that too. And basically, this is just a direct sequel to Dead Island. So this is actually Dead Island 2. Dead Island Riptide immediately starts you right at the end of the first game. So I know how the first game ends now, thanks to a handy little recap. And the big thing it does is it continues all 4 of the characters from the first game, as well as introduces a 5th character. Now you can play as this ex-soldier dude from Australia who has really powerful hands. And so obviously I picked him to see what that went like. And I don't know if his storyline starts off differently, but you start off on a ship, and then you have to escape a sinking ship, because the zombie infection is obviously going to spread everywhere. And by the end of that ship section, you end up on a new island, and then that's going to be the new home base for escalations, which was crazy because in the first game I didn't realize you went to a prison towards the end of it and escaped or whatever was going on there. And that shows you how these games can evolve and go different places and aren't just set to one location. But for Dead Island Riptide, you start off at level 15. You already have some of your skill trees chosen for you. So it really is almost more like an expansion, which is probably why they called it Riptide instead of Dead Island 2. But it really is a standalone game, which is cool. And more of the same with the guy I picked. It was much better to go and punch things, though it had a lot harder starting point. So I found it a lot harder to escape from the ship than I had from the just playing the island, doing the initial few quests. But something to be aware of. I would assume that your save data from the first game will carry over to Riptide, but I don't know that for sure. If you guys know, let me know. And then is Dead Island 2 worth checking out? Because I know my buddy Jared liked it a lot. But anyways, there you go. There are 10 games for you to check out here in the last few days before Halloween. Thank you guys again. What a wonderful journey this month has been. We did phenomenal as far as the watch time, the views. This is one of the best months ever, which is great because we took a dip. You know, the FOMO definitely helped the channel, I'm not going to lie. But post the store closing down, there was a lull in August, but now it's built back up. And just the great comments I'm seeing from you guys too. Thank you. You know, I'll say it again. If you don't see me respond in the comments, it's because for some reason YouTube does not like it. I don't know if by me responding to comments it makes people less likely to comment, or if they just are more unlikely to respond. But I'm reading. I read every comment. You know, I try to do my best to respond when apt. You know, as always happens, you end up responding to the people who are mean. But I try not to. But I also try to have a healthy discourse. I don't mind you coming at me, bro. So I'm just happy to have you guys. I'm happy you guys are enjoying the content. We got another video coming next week that has some real good bangers that were donated to the channel from Michael from last week. So thank you again. But hey, as a reminder, I release a new video every Tuesday. Have a happy Halloween. We'll see you next week, and take care.